So why are these rules and principles so freaking important? Why can't we just have good content, throw it in the editing software, and then edit it? Well, it's a lot like in cinematography where we have these golden rules and principles like the rule of thirds. There's this tried and true method in theory that has been used for hundreds of years that happen to work really well for this specific medium. And so editing has these same exact kind of rules. And the meaning and the purpose behind these rules is to keep a seamless flow of engaging creativity, right? Using your medium to engage the audience, but seamlessly. There's not these barricades or barriers they have to move out of the way of, or that are confusing, or that throw them out, that stops them from absorbing your art or your film or your movie. And basically, what I mean by throwing out the audience is when you sit down and you watch a film, like we've talked about, you relax. You let the film think for you. Now, when there's something that comes up, like a break in continuity or a confusing camera movement or an edit that's out of place, this throws out our audience where they come out of that relaxed, interested mood and experience and come into something that's a barrier or a blockage to that specific part in your scene. So knowing these things, there's a few principles and techniques and theories really that allow us to create this seamless flow in a cinematic film. So why are these rules? And so next up And so next up is the continuity of your image. And continuity is simply having a seamless flow with the objects and the orientation of what's going on in your frame. I think I did a good job of explaining this in a previous video. Let's check that out. Alright, so the first topic that this whole episode is going to be about is continuity. What is continuity? It's a quality or state of something that does not change over a period of time. So an example of a break in continuity would be that while I'm talking, my shirt changes colors. Alright, this is a basic principle of film. When you sit down and become involved in a film, you turn off your conscious problem-solving mind. Your attention is on the subject and the plot of what's going on. Having that break in continuity disrupts the connection with the viewer to the film. Once you understand how the rules work, you can break them for a desired effect. So you can see that breaking continuity in your film can be distracting, whether it's changing an object that's in the frame or a shirt, or changing the location or time of day. All these things change the essence of the continuity. So knowing that, we can use this continuity that's this really seamless similarity between one shot. We can take that and move that continuity into the next shot, which brings us to cutting on movement and also combining that with possibly using color and the shapes that are in one shot that will gel or blend into the following shot. Now, whenever we have movement, let's say in the frame, we always have an opportunity here, if there is movement in two shots, to sync up those two shots between the cut. So we're matching shot A with a movement that moves into a secondary movement that's happening in shot B. So let's see what that looks like. Right? You're having in mind a certain
Now with blending two similar shaped frames is a little bit equal or similar to the eye trace, right? You're having in mind a certain frame shape is going to guide the eye a certain way. So if we take this frame, for instance, you can see that the eye is going to be guided to either this portion of the pier or here in the background. There's this leading line that's kind of keeping the eye here or here. Now the next frame that we cut to is very similar because we have our subject here at the bottom right of the screen and then the buildings in the background. So we can see the similarity, and if we layer those images on top of each other, you can see we have the subject where I would say the primary point of focus is, and then possibly the secondary point of focus would be here. So with this similar kind of overall frame shaping, we can create this seamless blended image. And as well, the next frame that we cut to gives them something to look at here, and then what he would be looking at would be here. Very similar to this previous frame. So then as you can see, our focus being to the right of the frame, primary, secondary, would be to the left of the frame. Right is primary, secondary to the left. Similar here, right primary, secondary left. Right is primary, but we're moving our subject from the right of the frame to the center of the frame. And in the next shot that we see, the focus is at the center of that frame. So when you really get into the shot ordering and the shot choice that you're using, when you get to those final refining edits of your actual video, you'll begin to see that once you get it down to what the edit should be like, there are no other scenarios or places for those video clips to go. Once you whittle it down, it's almost like it's an exact alphabet where A, B, C, D, you wouldn't rearrange any of that. So once you get to that point, you know that you have a final product that's ready. Now we have a very smooth shot of our subject here. And what we do is go into a quickly time remapped portion of the clip right there, where the camera itself kind of had a bouncing, jarring effect, which you would normally throw out, pulling the selects. But the way it works in this situation is it leads into the next shot, which is a handheld shot in the car. Let's see what that looks like.
Dang, so it's still trying to get right.
So as we can see, using these kind of techniques such as, blending together two shots that maybe don't have anything similar, but they have the same camera movement, that could even be a jarring effect that you would normally throw out. But you see with these deeper understandings of, okay, maybe I can use this similar camera movement between two frames to seamlessly blend these images together for a more professional look. And so let's take a look at what it would look like without these two similar camera movements, blending these two cuts together.
Working on mental aspects of the game, so it's still trying to get right.
So you can see it's subtle, but there's not nearly as much of that same flow where one shot leads into the next. Knowing this ahead of time, we can kind of weave and create a much more dynamic video in the long run by knowing that you can create invisible cuts, or you can create very prominent, in your face type of cuts between shots, depending on the look and the aesthetic that you're going for. And so the next thing we have to understand is what creates a jump cut, right? This is basically a cut between two separate shots where there isn't enough contrast, which creates a distracting cut for the viewer. Now, the only way I can really describe why this happens is if we can imagine we have a white screen with black text on that screen. Now, there's enough contrast between those two elements for you to read what's in front of you, for you to absorb that information. Now, let's say that black text wasn't quite as contrasted between the white. You wouldn't be able to read the information or absorb that information that's right there in front of you. And so in filmmaking, the way that we can successfully cut between two shots is to always have enough contrast. Like I explained in the production aspect, is that you always want to be keeping a 45-degree angle minimum between two separate camera angles. It's the same in post-production.
You know, I'm not doing it to compete with anybody, but your company, you got to build your brand around you, like be who you want to be, show the world who you are.
So you can see that there's enough contrast between each one of these shots, even though they're from one continuous take. Now let's see what it would have looked like to not have as much contrast between each shot.
Compete with anybody, but your company, you got to build your brand around you, like be who you want to be, show the world who you are.
So you can see that it's confusing if there's not enough change between two separate frames. So always keeping that in mind to keep your editing as seamless as possible. And so the next element is to cut with purpose and change in mind. Now, we always want to be coming into a scene at the right time, and we always want to be leaving a scene at the right time. So the best way to kind of be a judge of this is to have a good feeling about the interest or the purpose of that actual scene. Because if we come into a scene way too early and there's no important information for the viewer to be absorbing, it's going to be very bland. It's going to be boring. There's not going to be an important moment of focus for the viewer to be absorbing. And now it's similar when we're leaving a scene. We don't want to cut too early. We don't want to cut too late because the scene has to finish itself. It's like me stopping in the middle of... So let's check it out.
Hey, Quincy Miller, what's up, man?
So as you can see, there's a good balance of the amount of information that the viewer is taking in for it to feel seamless. Now, if we have this same intro shot, but we extend the beginning, let's see what kind of effect that we have. So as you can see, when you're trying to figure out when to cut or when to go into an image, there has to be a balance between the amount of information you're giving leading into the scene, the exciting or interesting, or the reason behind actually having that shot. You don't want to cut too much into that moment, and you don't want to leave too much leading up into that moment either. Now let's take a look if we extend the timing of the last clip in this sequence. So depending on how much information has to be absorbed by your viewer at that specific moment in the video will decide how much running time you leave into your cuts and how much outro time that you have at the end of your cuts. And now, last up on the guidelines of what creates seamless films and videos is the ability to compress time, right? 24 hours in real life doesn't have to translate to 24 hours in a video. This is the really cool aspect of film where we can stretch and expand moments in time or squeeze and contract them through time lapses or slow motions or extending the certain feeling of a certain scene or squishing the certain feeling so it seems like everything happens very abruptly. We can use all these elements to dramatically affect the way people feel about our films. So let's take a look at what this sequence would have looked like if we just did everything in real time. So as you can see, that 5 second window of real life time might have been funny, but that's not the kind of cinematic look that we're going for in this specific instance. Now let's take a look at what that would aesthetically look like if we use this principle of expanding time in the filmmaking world. So as you can see, squeezing, compressing, and expanding certain moments in a cinematic way will create an entirely different effect. So as an editor, you can always keep this in mind that there are certain moments that happen in front of the camera that you can change in post-production and intensify those elements in the films that we really want people to absorb.